podcast. I'm your co-host, Roger Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, happy birthday to the podcast. Happy birthday to the podcast. Happy birthday, dear M&R cast. Happy birthday to the podcast. Do you ever think we'd make it this far?
At some point I realized we were, but definitely not at the start.
That's fair.
What about you? Did you think we were going to make it here?
I take everything almost one day at a time, man. Like, whatever happened with the podcast. And thankfully, it's found a good listener base. Flesh and Blood continues to be a fun game, not ran by people who actively hate their fan base. And yeah, it's worked out well so far, I would say.
Yeah.
Which is why it's time we've announced that we've had a good run. Thanks everybody for listening, and we appreciate all the support over the past year. But we're done now, right, Michael?
Yeah, we're definitely done. Goodbye, everybody. I love you all. It was great. We're not done, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
We could at least finish this episode.
Okay. Wonderful. Great.
Cool. What do you want to talk about on our 1 year anniversary?
So to celebrate, we wanted to look back and talk about some of our favorite episodes over the year. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's the plan. That's what I have. I have a list of 5 episodes that I like very much that we recorded over the past year. This way, people want to go back, they can record them, or not record them, but people want to go back, they can listen to them. And if not, we can kind of have a good summary of the things we've discussed, had it learned along the way, and our incredible journey of Flesh and Blood.
Yeah. Sounds great. I got my list ready to go. Hopefully everybody can enjoy and go back and listen. And some of these might have come out before some of our listeners started listening, because they're not all mine are recent ones, though a lot of them are.
Yeah. Well, that being said, what's the first episode you want to talk about that you really enjoyed over the past year?
So I think the one that I want to talk about is episode 47. We just did it. It is Wolfpack Updates with Zach Bine. I think, actually, wait, I have an honorable mention that I forgot to talk about.
Well, then do your...
Okay. So my honorable mention would have made the list if it was allowed on the list, but I don't think it's allowed. But it's the first episode of the Manor University. It was, we covered the World Finals match between me and Chris Ciali, and on top of having a lot of like sentimental value to me, it was the moment I won Worlds that we were reviewing and going over. It also just like was when we started pushing and making more content for our patrons, and even some for general YouTube, where we were starting Manor University and just going through and breaking down games. And I think that's like, we kind of preached on the podcast that replay review is the best way to get better at the game. You should watch your replays and learn a lot from them and try to learn from your mistakes. And just like starting to create that content where we're going into reviews, breaking down gameplay decisions, and just trying to help people get better. I think that was like a pretty big step in terms of like what we were doing for the podcast. And that just like stands out as a monumental moment to me.
Yeah, it was a good one. I wish I was as good as actually playing Flesh and Blood as I am like coming up with the lines and seeing through things as I am when we're like reviewing them on University. I don't know like what it is. Like when you sit down for a game of Flesh and Blood, your just train of thought is just like so concentrated. I feel like it's sometimes harder to see the bigger picture, but like when that pressure's off of you and you're just like evaluating things objectively and it's not like you in either seat, it's just like, oh, well, clearly this like seemed like a very right line to take here, or like it's not 100% of the time, and obviously there are gray areas, but it just feels like when the pressure's off, it's just so much easier to like just like see through like what does and doesn't matter sometimes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think like that's why replay review is so useful, so powerful, because you won't see all those things in the game, and then when you stop and look at it afterwards, you kind of can see a lot more of the lines and you can pause and take time when you're like relaxing at home or relaxing and don't have like a time pressure to make a play or anything, and just kind of go back and be like, what if I had done this instead? And go through it and take as long as that takes and really like work through all the different possibilities. And when you do that, I don't know, you just like learn things from it, and it's really useful, I think, for playing future games.
Yeah,
Maybe we
absolutely.
should cover some of your games on University soon.
I'd have to have some games on
Got to
camera.
record them.
Oh yeah, I guess I could record random games. That's a thing I could do.
That'd be a fun
I could have
episode.
I could have put out my cell phone while you were beating me up in our Pro Tour Baltimore prep. People could just
The
we could
Lexi v Oldham games.
yeah the 0 and 12 or whatever I went in the 2 days before, and I still registered Oldham anyways because Oldham's the most broken deck of all time.
Hmm. I don't know if Lexi's the most broken deck of all time, but it probably I would say Codex of Frailty might be the most broken card of all time. It's very
I
very
would
good.
agree with that. Yeah, I would like in Magic. We always knew like how good like reanimation was, or taking something out of your graveyard and putting it back onto the battlefield to do stuff with. And we knew how good tutors were, which is like looking through your deck or picking a specific resource or a specific action for a very specific game state. And I don't know, in Flesh and Blood, it seems like the graveyard recursion of uh, Codex just seems to be maybe a bit too much, especially with the built-in card advantage that's going along with it. But I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I really think that the graveyard recursion is not like it is very good. The fact that you're choosing whatever card from your discard pile to play again is strong, but like I think it's only slightly better than tutoring through your deck for any card, which it is better, but like it's I guess that's basically what it is. You can choose any of the attacks that you've played, and that's part of why
Or
it's
block with.
powerful. But I think
You don't have to
yeah,
tag with it. So
that's fair. But I do think what is most powerful about it is just like the fact that you get whatever attack you want and you're getting a plus value exchange where you're getting this ponder token and you're not discarding a card because you play it on an empty hand. So you trade it for 2 cards. You trade 1 card for 2 cards. You get to get whichever card you want. And also your opponent gets a frailty token on top of that, which like sometimes doesn't matter, but sometimes it's worth like 1 to 3 extra points.
yeah, absolutely.
So just very powerful.
Good
And I
card.
don't remember exactly how we got here.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I think it's a good card, but it's not built around the most busted mechanic of all time, which was Spectra, which we talked about in great length on episode 27 with Joshua Scott, the head rules and policy advisor for LSS. And that was a great episode. We got talked a lot about the nuances, kind of the differences that go on between competitive players and like the whole judging community, because obviously you have to be really smart and engaged with the community to do either, but they kind of branch off and have their very like important differences. And it's just always nice to just shine a spotlight on the judging community because they're so vital to us all playing Flesh and Blood in general. So, and that the cherry on top was Josh Scott was actually a really cool guy and he gave us chocolate. So, win-win.
he, he did give us chocolate. Would his episode have still made your list if he did not give us chocolate?
It would have been close.
Okay.
It would have been close.
I think that episode was. I also really like that episode. I'm always a little bit out of my comfort zone when we have guests on here. Like normally, I'm just talking to you. It's great, but sometimes we have guests on, and I'm like, ooh, another person. What do I do? But Josh was a really good guest. I think he did a great job, like kind of bringing to light some things about judging and like the rules in the game that were really cool and interesting to me. And I think that was a great episode. And like you said, bringing light to the judge community, awesome, because judges work really hard. They're the reason we can play the tournaments that we love to play. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but then we can go back and cover what was your first like real not honorable mention then?
Yeah. It was the Wolfpack updates with Zach Bunn, episode 47. I
Oh yeah, that guy.
think so. Zach
You
again.
just said you
He's
don't like guest episodes, and here you are mentioning a guest episode.
I know. This is the only one that made my list. So spoilers. But
Okay.
Zach, this was our first and so far only second or recurring guest where we actually had him on. I think it was episode 12. I went back and looked, but it was like really early on when we had him on the first time. But He is a very good guest. I think he tells really good stories. And Zach is actually somebody that I do feel comfortable having on because I consider him a really good friend now. And I think just talking about him, talking through Wolfpack stuff, it felt really cool to hear all of his stuff. And I think like it kind of shines a light to behind the scenes what is going on in the Wolfpack for our listeners. And they kind of like find out what our daily life of Flesh and Blood is like. And I think that's something that like without him having on, I think it might be kind of hard to really go into details. And well, it was a lot easier when he was here to just talk about that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoyed that episode. So it made my list number 5.
Yeah. I think what's interesting every time I go to like a tournament with Zach and stuff like that is that obviously he's like a pretty well known content creator. So when hanging around him is always interesting because like he's getting people coming up saying like, "Oh, I really like the Team Covenant stuff," and then we're getting people harassing us, asking us to sign babies at like for or
Harassing.
you signed the baby uh, for liking our content that we very much appreciate and love and don't consider it harassment at all. And yeah, it's just like because when we first started, like when I first met Zach, I was the fan going up to him and being like, "Hey, I really like your stuff, just so you know." And I'm sorry I brought Michael Hamilton into the game. He's very good. And he's like, oh, okay, well, nice to meet you. And that was kind of it. And then yeah, I guess the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. The rest is history. Zach's a great guy, though. What's your next
Yeah.
episode?
Uh, our beginner budget decks.
Oh,
And I think our budget decks are still good overall. I guess the little minnowism Phi probably can't be played anymore. So we'll probably revisit them again in the future. But I think it's important to recognize that not everybody is going to just like always want to or be able to like afford the perfect versions of all the tier one competitive decks, but they still want to play Flesh and Blood and they still want to have a good time and not get beat up all the time. And so when we asked for ideas for episodes, that one was pretty high on the top of the list for what people wanted to see. So I was happy, or we were happy to like oblige them and try to think things through. And yeah, I just thought the decks that we put out were pretty good. I hope that if anybody actually did put them together, build them, or play them into armories, I hope they did well with them. And and it, despite the little minnowism fight still not being like a playable anymore either, Phi seems to have done pretty well at the Pro Tour. It's kind of a small sample size, but maybe a kind of a dark horse in the format. So who knows?
yeah. That's definitely. So Phi doing well at the Pro Tour, that I think is interesting because I think Phi's very good into Oldhim right now without Winard's Whale, without like Oldheim's just a lot worse against Phi because you can't really fatigue him because he has like Shuko Phoenix Flame stuff and his average value damage per turn is still like reasonably higher than what Oldheim can typically block in a game. Plus, it's spread out with like Phoenix Flames going on, and I think like his matchup into Lexi probably isn't amazing, but it really depends on the Lexi build, and he does have additional blocking armor compared to Katsu with the Flamescale Furnace being able
And
to block
technology like
twice.
Breaking Point, I think would be. I don't know how played that was at the Pro Tour, but it seems like an interesting card. We saw, obviously Mara using it against Brody to good effect. So Breaking Point seems like a pretty good card against Lexi specifically.
Yeah, definitely. And it blocks for 3, so when you can't really keep a hand that goes 4 wide to use it, you can always just block with it. Lexi's going to give you plenty of great opportunities to block with your 3 blocks.
Yeah, and Phi has good blocking armor overall because of Flame Scale Furnace, Tiger Stripe Shuko. Like it's a lot of 2 blocks on the armor, and then usually Snapdragon Scalers don't block, but there's definitely lots of blocking armor available to him for him being an aggressive deck.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how Phi does in a field of Lexi and Oldheim and Dromai. Because I think like if Oldheim and Dromai are both like very good matchups for you, which I think that's pretty common consensus that Phi beats up Dromai, and I believe Phi beats up Oldheim pretty badly. So like if
As
you
long
can
as you
get your
play
Lexi
well, yeah.
matchup to even like 45-55, Phi seems like a great choice. So yeah.
I guess we'll have to see how Road to
Speaking
Nats turn out, though.
yeah, that's
Go ahead,
true.
though.
So speaking on your budget decks, I think I talked about a Lexi deck on that episode, and like
Oh,
I don't know if you
Snapshot.
can build I don't think you can build Lexi very budgety anymore. Codex of Frailty is like $1,000,000. Premeditate or Art of War, whichever route you go, is also like $1,000,000. So, I mean, I shouldn't say you can't build Lexi budget. You can definitely still play a budget version of Lexi, but like a lot of the cards that you'll want to include in the deck have, yeah, even the cards that are new that are, or that aren't new that were cheap before, a lot of them have gone up significantly since Lexi became a tier 1 deck.
Yeah, because you still need New Horizons in any build of Lexi. And let me check. I think that card's like
Not Death
insanely
Dealer.
expensive. Not Death Dealer, but let's check here.
I guess the ice version of Lexi is probably pretty cheap. The Go Tall Ice Death Dealer deck.
Yep, $200. Cheapest copy NTCG player
For,
right
for
now.
New Horizons.
Yeah, for Rainbow Foil.
Oof.
Card's expensive now. So Lexi is now expensive because you not only need New Horizon, you also need Findel Spring Tunic for the most competitive versions of Lexi. So $400, 2 cards. Not very budget.
Yeah, fair. So we'll have to go back and revisit the budget decks at some point. I also wanted to say that I did look at some of our analytics before coming on this episode, while I was like looking at and deciding what episodes to choose. So I wanted to see what episodes like resonated with the community and stuff. What episodes stood out. What episodes got like a lot of people watched, I guess. And that one did like surprisingly well too. So it's a good episode.
Okay. I'm glad you agree. Was it on your list?
It was not. It was not. But
Look
my
at
list
that.
has a lot of
I'm glad we
personal
actually have
bias
different
for what is
episodes
my
so far.
favorites. Okay.
I mean, I personally like all my episodes too. I personally like Josh.
I guess that's the point of the
personally
thing.
Like Zach, but I talk to Zach all the time. I've only talked to Josh a handful of times.
Yeah, fair. Okay, my next episode, number 4, it was episode 38, but number 4 on my list was the 1,000 subscriber special. So this was a huge benchmark. We hit 1,000 subscribers. It was like kind of our goal for a long time was to get to 1,000 subscribers because it seemed like it was like a nice extra digit, one more digit of subscribers. It felt like, I don't know, a level of legitimacy to me. And we kind of talked about it a little bit on that episode, but that was really cool when we finally hit that number and we got to do that episode. And it came honestly faster than I expected it to. And our growth since that episode has been crazy too. We're like almost to 1,500 subscribers now. So it's been 14 weeks since then. So our subscriber growth has been pretty high too. But anyway, so it was a huge benchmark. It also happened to fall right after the Calling Indianapolis, which went really well for me. So extra, I don't know, just felt really good after that tournament. It was doing good. And then one thing that I liked about that episode that I didn't realize until, again, I was looking at the analytics, is that was our most commented video. We had 55 comments on that video, and it was like by far the video that has the most comments. And it was really cool seeing like we like interviewed each other and we talked about just like our lives basically. And it seemed like the audience really engaged with that. All of our community like commented and said nice things. And they seemed to like an episode where we kind of got into, we kind of got to get to know each other, or let the audience know each other. Cause some of the questions we talked about, that was the episode where we interviewed each other about things. I hope I'm not going in circles, but we talked to each other. We asked a bunch of questions and just kind of gave the audience more of a look into our lives. And it was a really fun episode to do. And I think the audience really engaged with it as well. Let me know in the comments, I guess, if you didn't like that episode, but I think it was a really good one.
Or unsubscribe and put us back below 1,000 subscribers. And then we'll have to redo this 1,000 subscribers.
That would be a lot of unsubscribes.
I wonder if I'm the first person on YouTube to ask people, please unsubscribe, don't comment, and unclick the bell.
Wait, isn't unclicking the bell the same as unsubscribing?
No. So you have to subscribe and click the bell, because if you just subscribe, you don't get notifications. But if you subscribe and click the bell, it's like a double subscribe whammy, where not only will it appear in your subscriptions feed, but you'll get the YouTube bell notification when they upload or do things. You're not a big YouTuber,
I don't know if
I see.
Ever clicked the bell. I spend like a reasonable amount of time on YouTube, and I'm subscribed to like some channels, but I don't think I've ever clicked the bell, actually. I thought
You're
it was
not
just
directly supporting your favorite subscribers the best way possible.
Wait, does clicking the bell actually like
It
do
matters.
things?
It counts for more engagement.
I should go click some bells.
You should.
Who knew?
Who knew? But yeah, 1K subscriber was actually on my list as well. It was a good episode.
Nice.
Not the most Flesh and Blood related, but can't be all Flesh and Blood all the time. And even for our 1 year anniversary, it's not directly about Flesh and Blood. I guess kind of in a meta level, it's mostly about Flesh and Blood. Because if we're talking about podcasts about Flesh and Blood, it's kind of like Flesh and Blood related still, though, right?
Like this episode?
Yeah.
It's like Flesh and Blood meta, kind of. No, it's not. Meta has a meaning. Meta has a meaning, which is like what
meta has a lot of meanings.
Like, I mean, in terms of Flesh and Blood, when you're saying the Flesh and Blood meta, the meta game of Flesh and Blood, that is different from what we were talking about.
We're talking about the podcast meta Flesh and Blood.
No, we're talking about the podcast.
The order in which the meta
that's not even the podcast meta. It's just the podcast.
It's the
I'm in
Flesh
over
and Blood
my head.
podcast meta.
Yes. Which is very different from the Flesh and Blood meta.
Yeah, but if the Flesh and Blood podcast meta is talking about the Flesh and Blood meta, there we go. We did it.
Sometimes you ask these questions that feel like a little bit circular in nature, and I don't really know how to respond. I'm just like, okay.
That's the point. That's the fun. That's why I'm excited to go to law school, buddy. And on that note, this feels oddly reminiscent of my next favorite episode, which is the riveting pivoting episode, where we go.
That was like my least favorite episode of all time.
It's my favorite episode, or one of my favorite episodes now. Clearly, it's so good because it's pivots clearly exist in Flesh and Blood. We all know what a Flesh and Blood pivot is now, clearly by a standardized definition that we helped hammer out. And yeah, it was a good time as I tried to educate you on something in Flesh and Blood, and we talked a lot about how to create pivot turns in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, we kind of did. I kind of got educated. I still felt pretty confused by the end of the episode. And, oh gosh. Yep, that was sure an episode we did. That was like, I think if I had to rank all 52 episodes that we've done, I think that might be 50 seconds. So I'm glad.
That's crazy.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
I think like episodes like 3 through 9 would probably all be like episode 1. It only gets the pass because it's like the first episode. So sentimental, I guess. But like the recording quality was so bad on our initial episodes. We obviously didn't have video going. We didn't know what we were doing. It was just, I felt like those episodes were just very challenging overall. So I'm not super happy with them in hindsight, but like we made them. They're there.
Yeah. Fair.
I think the only one we even talk about a lot very much is the top 10 cards of all time. But we kind of did a good refresh on that anyways over the next year or so.
Wait, what do you mean?
On the over and underrated cards, basically. So.
Oh. What are we at? Number 3. Okay.
Go for
my
it.
Number 3 was the Wounded Bull Icelander deep dive episode. It was episode 19. This came right after U.S. Nationals. This was like, it felt like this was kind of when our podcast took off, when we like got
when you started winning things.
New...
More things, I should say. You'd already won 2 callings, but winning U.S. Nats kind of cemented our trajectory on the upward spiral.
That did help, but we got a lot of additional audience members. It also was kind of when you put in a lot of work to like clean up some of the stuff around the episode. I think that was when we got the fire intro on the YouTube video, and you did some other work around then too. So that was just like, I think it's like not even the episode itself that stood out. It was just like a lot of the things around the episode, like all the audio improvements, winning nationals, the amount of viewers that we gained from it, and just like kind of the first time we really did a deep dive on a deck as well. So yeah, it was a fun episode, and just happened at I don't know what else to say about it. Sorry.
Yeah. Now you don't care about the meta of the episode. You care about the meta of the meta of for the meta Flesh and Blood, right? How many layers of meta are we talking about?
It's only well, actually, if you like go to like what that episode was about, it was about like the the actual meta of Flesh and Blood. So
Mhm.
like this is the meta of the podcast about an episode that was about the meta of Flesh and Blood. So like
3 metas,
there's
right?
at least 2 levels of meta, potentially 3 layers there.
Yeah, because I think it's the third level of meta because you like the things surrounding, you like the meta surrounding the podcast as we discuss the meta of our podcast that discuss the meta of Flesh and Blood.
Yes. Perfect. So it is 3 layers of meta going on here. So, yep.
Okay, can't argue with that logic, that's for sure.
What's your next one?
This was kind of cheating. It's and I just kind of briefly alluded to it, which was overrated cards. I picked that one over underrated cards. I kind of prefer overrated cards a little bit because I think the points that I made were really poignant in like going back to what we said on like the very first episode, which was like Sink Below is the best card in the game. Most decks always just include 3 copies of Sink Below, you know, as a default. But the point I made on that episode was like, I don't think that that's right. And just because like Sink Below is still a very good card. And if the actual rate at which Sink Below should be played is like 90% in decks and it's played at like 99% of decks, that still means it's an overrated card that's put in too many decks. So I was really proud of that point. I felt like I communicated it well. I feel like when I first brought up Sink Below, you're like, you're crazy. And I felt like actually by the end of it, I was able to lay out enough points in my argument that you agreed with me. So I was like, hell yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that stood out to me that we talked about with that point was that like even if Sink Below should be in your deck, you should be like selective about what matchups you're boarding it in. And like people like some decks, I agree that 3 Sink Below should be in the deck, but then like some of the matchups that you bring in the 3 Sink Belows in, I was like, you probably shouldn't bring them in there. And that happens like all the time when people have Sink Below in their deck. And like most decks probably should have Sink Below, but like that doesn't mean you should play it at every matchup. That means there's like in these matchups, if it doesn't fit your plan, if it's not important in this specific, like the way the matchup plays out, you should be sideboarding it out or not presenting it as part of the 60 you present in some matchups. And that point really kind of resonated with me. And I definitely did agree with you that Sink Below qualified as overrated by the end of your conversation there, or by the end of that conversation. I
Hell
think
yeah, dude.
that episode was also on my list as well. I think like I talked about going over analytics, and this episode did really well on the analytics as well. And I think one thing that kind of cemented it for me as one of my favorite episodes was your spiel about Crown of Providence at the end, where you're like, Crown of Providence, overrated and stuff. And then just during the Pro Tour, we saw Mara get second with no Crown of Providence and playing Arcanite Skullcap. So
yeah, Crown of
that
Providence
was
was, you know, very similar to like the Simple argument where it's just like, yeah, like it's a very good card, very powerful piece of equipment, but there are situations in which you will want to block on hits potentially frequently throughout a game and you'll want Skullcap. And we saw Mara do really well.
yeah. I don't know if you said this when you first brought up the episode, but it was episode 41. So in case anybody wanted to go back and take a look at that.
Yeah, and then 40 was underrated cards.
Yep.
I don't remember
Which was
that
also
one
a
as
good
well.
episode.
I don't
remember it as well either.
I don't even remember what I said was underrated anymore. Oh, Enchanting Melody. That's right.
Oh, no.
That's right. Enchanting
What
Melody's
did I
going to
say
matter.
was
Dust Till Dawn, Ward, all the Ward Matters cards are coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I
if
think
you
I
really
had
think about it,
Telephone
Enchanting
all-
Melody is really just like a cleaner version of Soraya, right? They both have Ward 4, but you can play Enchanting Melody, you don't need a Spectral Shield.
Yeah. Soraya being able to attack, just completely irrelevant. Enchanting Melody cannot attack. Soraya can attack.
I don't see any other lines of text on either of those cards other than Ward 4, you know?
Yep. How much does Soraya cost? Also, it's like 4, right? Instead of 2.
I think it's 2. Is it 4? I don't know. It's not a real card yet, so I don't know anything about it.
Wait. Oh, it's not like a played card. We gotta wait for Dust Till Dawn.
Oh yeah, I guess it's like
I
guess it's a real card, but it's not like a real card, you know?
Yeah. Is what's Bolton's little gem called? Spirit of
Spirit
Irina. Is that a
Arena?
real card?
That's a totally real card.
Okay.
I mean, because it's playable in a hero in Classic Constructed that you can put it in your deck and play it and have to think about it. Like I haven't had to think about a light illusionist at all since Prism rotated. So them adding a light illusionist card in a set at legendary was just like weird.
Sure. That makes sense.
Like it probably would have made more sense to maybe give Arachne something more, like another Arachne playable legendary card or something like that. Maybe a second specialization, or even I don't know. But like, and just save the Light Angel for Dust to Dawn. But I don't know. I don't design sets. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah.
Okay.
But that's it. I think that's all of our episodes then.
I got one more.
All
I
of
got one
our.
more.
Oh, you do? You have one more? You
Yeah.
hid one?
Yep. No,
Okay.
I didn't hide it. I've done 4. You've done 5 because we had overlap on 2 of them, and I started with my honorable mention.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
So the last one is the World Champ Icelander deck tech. Okay, now you might have noticed a brief pause in, or a weird shift in the audio or faces if you're watching the video. That's because Roger made a joke that we had to cut, not appropriate at all. But
Me
my number
make an
one
inappropriate joke that we had to cut out of a podcast? Don't believe it. Never happens.
So, my last episode is the World Champ Icelander deck tech episode 29. So this one we actually took a while after Worlds before we did this episode. We didn't do it right away, even. But this was like the first. I shouldn't say the first episode, but everybody really wanted a sideboard guide for Icelander. I'm like, I don't do sideboard guides. Sideboard guides suck because everything changes. So instead, we kind of did an episode where I could go into all the caveats with, I'm like, this is how I currently sideboard, but this would change if so and so happens. And that was a fun episode to do, both because like it was what we were asked for a lot of times, and like people really just wanted to know how to sideboard with the Icelander deck because it's like not a very easy deck to play, and if you're trying to figure out how to sideboard with it and you're trying to figure out how to play it at the same time, it's asking a lot. So we did this episode. It was what a lot of people had asked for, and it basically had twice as many views as our second most popular episode. So this, I felt like it would be weird not to put this episode on the list. Even like, I think I kind of talked about it earlier that I was a little bit biased. A lot of these episodes happened around like major milestones for me in my Flesh and Blood career, where after Worlds, that's like, I don't know, that's like a moment that like changed my life significantly. So yeah, I wanted to put it on the list, and then the audience also loved it. They had twice as many views as their next episode. We talked about the Icelander deck I played at Worlds, all the sideboarding decisions, about how some of the decisions would change if after Worlds or because of X things, or if their deck had different things. And I got to put all those caveats in what essentially was just like a long, big sideboarding guide. And yeah, the episode will forever have a special place in my heart because I don't know, it was our most popular episode and it was right after Worlds, which mattered a lot to me. And I got to talk about my favorite deck.
Fair enough.
That's all.
Yeah, I wish Icelander was still playable. Do you think even
Codex
if they
of
unban
Frailty.
hypothermia, like
no, it's
like,
Codex
I
of
don't even
Frailty.
think if
Ban
they
Codex of Frailty and you can play Icelander. Kind of.
like,
You'll still have a bad Lexi matchup, but Lexi will be worse because she'll be worse against everything else.
well, just if we went the opposite direction though, like if they unban hypothermia, Icelander still wouldn't be favored in Alexi, right?
No, it would help because Lexi would not be able to just take a bunch of damage and present a big hand back as often because sometimes you just get hypothermia. But I don't think it would solve the issues that you currently have playing against Lexi, which is when you disrupt her, she can just set up and
because Voltaire's an instant.
Yeah. And you don't have a way to get rid of New Horizon. If you could kill New Horizon somehow, then that would fix the matchup too. I think like New Horizon, pretty good card. And Tumultai is a big part of the reason Droma is okay into Lexi.
Yeah. And people really hated the ban Voltaire take. Let me tell you. I don't think I've heard a single person on the social medias. Everybody on the team thinks I'm a crazy person. Everybody hates the entire idea around banning Voltaire, but I still think they should ban Voltaire. But
people like Lexi. She has been bad for a long time. And even when she was bad, people tried to make her work. I guess she wasn't bad. I feel like she wasn't even bad before Outsiders came out, but Outsiders did make her very, very good.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think Voltaire's a messed up card, but I guess we'll have to see. I'm getting more on board with the banning of the 3 of a kind, though, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, because against the aggressive Oldheims, like 3 of a kind is always like how you get back into a game that it feels like you're losing. You have to block with 2 cards over and over again to stop these crush effects. And then one turn, you just go block with 2 cards, pitch a blue, play 3 of a kind, fire 2 arrows, and arsenal a card. Like, very strong.
Yeah. Just the amount of like raw pullback it gets there is kind of like not fair, I guess, the more I think about it. But, you know, apparently she has really bad matchups somewhere in the meta. Let me ask you that. Here's a question I've been thinking in my mind. Everybody else in the room is registering Lexi. What deck do you take?
Uzuri.
Okay.
The reason Uzuri is unplayable is because she can't ever beat Oldheim and she can't ever beat Dromai. But her Lexi matchup is actually good if you can build your deck to just like have the best 60 cards against Lexi.
Okay.
So if everyone else is on Lexi, I'm playing Uzuri. I think Uzuri kind of is bad, but you can build her to have a good Lexi matchup.
What do you think that win rate is, though? You think it's like 80%?
Probably. It's very good if you get to play like, because like you get to play infinite frailty cards, including Codex of Frailty. Frailty Trap is also insane against Lexi. You have good blocking equipment. Not good blocking equipment, like reasonable.
I was about to say, when did Uzuri get good blocking equipment? I missed that part.
Reasonable blocking equipment. And then Spider's Bite's actually good against Lexi because currently the Lexi builds don't have any non-attacks that block for 3. So Spider's Bite does mean everything's going to block for 2, except I guess if they're on Channel Lake Frigid, but that's not a very common Lexi card, I guess. It's not unheard of, but
yeah,
I don't know. So
yeah, I'm skeptical, but I could believe you.
I think we could get Uzuri to have a 80% win rate against Lexi with if you don't have to give any respect to the other heroes that your deck cannot function against, like Dromai and Oldheim. Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, like devoting slots to beating Dromai and Oldheim as Uzuri doesn't seem like it's going to increase your win rate by that much anyway. So like maybe you should just play the optimal 60 against Lexi and then make your other matchups that aren't Uzuri or aren't Dromai and Oldheim as good as possible if you want to play Uzuri. But that's where I'm at right now. This said, I've played like 2 games of CC Uzuri, so who knows?
And then I wish Arachne was good. Remember when they made Arachne?
Yeah, that was cool. Good. It was a new hero.
That was a good time. Yeah, a new class. It was so exciting. Yeah.
There's only 3 good contract cards, though.
And like
that's pushing it with Eradicate. 2 good contract cards and Eradicate.
Does like Arachne's hero ability even like matter with contract cards? Like, let's say there were like more good contract cards. Do you like just 0 for 4s that block 3 that go again contract or something like that? Do you think like
go again?
Yeah.
We're getting 0 for 4 go again? I'm in. Give me some Arachne.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the biggest thing holding back Arachne, right? Is just like no action points.
Yeah, it's tough.
I shouldn't say the biggest thing, but it's definitely one of the things holding back Arachne is that there's no action points anywhere. And it's just like, how do you use your cards? And then Arachne goes, I don't know, swing a Spider's Bite, I guess, and then threaten to banish a card from your deck. And deck's like, okay, I'll take 4 damages. You can banish a card, and then I'll 5 card 25 you. And then they're like, oh, I'm sad.
That's yeah. I would say like the weapon is Arachne's biggest weakness because Arachne, like Uzuri kind of cares about the weapon. Like she's trying to push through these on hits and like it's bad in some matchups, but other matchups it's passable. Arachne's game plan doesn't make sense with Spider's Bite, basically. It's like this weapon that makes them unable to block them, that makes your opponent unable to block them. And Arachne doesn't care if you block them. If you're blocking their on hits from your
contract cards
with no
either
on
way
hits.
They're getting the card, yeah.
Yeah, so Arachne doesn't care if you block them because they're not pushing through disruption on a lot of their attacks. So if you just block Arachne, then they're just like, oh, okay, that's fine. I got through 2 cards, and now you're not going to 5 card 25 me. But you Spider's Bite them, and then you play your, what's it called, Annihilate the Armed or whatever, and then your opponent's like, I don't want to block you anyway. I'll take 6. banish a
Yeah.
card from the top of my deck, and then
Woohoo.
they kill you.
You did it. You make a silver. Enjoy it.
Spider's Bite doesn't help at all with that plan. So
No. I don't know. Eventually, hopefully, maybe they make Arachne good.
yeah, I'm a little worried that like even if they print good contract cards, they'll probably just work better in Uzuri because Uzuri has Shakedown and Uzuri has a kind of just like
Well,
stronger
Usually cares
hero
about
power.
stealth inherently, not contract.
Yeah. But even like you lose out on Arachne's hero power of looking at the top of their deck and putting it on top or bottom when you play a contract card. But the contract cards are like not very much worse in Uzuri than they are in Arachne. And Uzuri has access to Shakedown, which is like a very, very powerful card, I think.
Yeah. I
So,
just had a
yeah.
revelation. And I realized the other big problem with Arachne's card pool is that Arachne has 0 for 4s and 1 for 5s. There's no 2
Mhm.
for 6s. There's no good,
Mhm.
like, really powerful, like, big attacks in Assassin. I get that it's kind of, like, unflavorful, but then you look at a card like Shakedown, which is a 2 for 6. And it's like, what? I just,
Yeah.
like, I just think like even like having more 2 for 6s would help out Assassin a lot because if they're trying to push these on hits that are cool and do things, then like let them pummel it. You know?
Yeah. Or even 3 for 7s in Arachne would be good because they're like
Sure. 3 for 7 contract.
getting
I'm in.
more, yes, getting more of the deck. Um, and Arachne doesn't want to pitch a whole card to play a 1 cost or even play a Spider's Bite in a 1 for 5. That's just like 1 less damage than a 3 for 7 would be and not pummelable, which not great. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that Arachne's card pool needs help. And I guess like if they get some good specializations, that would be a reason to play them over Uzuri. But I think without any
Like Regicide,
specializations,
beat up on the Royal Viscerize.
yeah, like Regicide.
Like why? Like it's such a good flavor card. Like the flavor on that card is really good. So
Yeah, but they're just missing good specializations as the reason you'd play them over Uzuri. And Uzuri is not a deck you can really play right now when Oldheim and Dromai are a big portion of the metagame. Well, I shouldn't say you can't play it, but you can't. Like when we were playing Oldheim at PT2, it was so good into everything that it was not named Prism. You were like 50-50 into Guardians, you were favored into like everything else, and then you could never beat Prism. And Uzuri's kind of like that, but probably less favored into the aggro decks and just as bad into Oldheim and Dromai. And that's 2 decks that you're really bad against. And Oldheim and Dromai aren't like awful into the aggro decks. We think they're unfavored, but it's not like Prism. I guess like Prism into the aggro decks wasn't that bad for Prism either. Like we still saw Prism beat Briar some of the time. But anyway, I think it's really tough to bring Uzuri to a tournament right now.
yeah.
That's all.
And it's not getting any easier with Prism around the corner.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Maybe we'll get a Shadow Assassin and Dust Till Dawn and get some new Assassin cards.
No, Shadow Wizard. Shadow Wizard. Say it
Ooh,
with
I'm
me,
down for
Michael.
a new wizard.
Shadow Wizard.
I'm down for a new wizard. I like
Yeah.
wizards.
Shadow Runeblade, Shadow Wizard, Light Illusionist, Light Warrior. Then you go.
There's no limited format either, so you don't have to worry about putting wizard and illusionist in the same format. I guess like they did that with not outsiders, uprising too, and that was fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the set's pretty big, right? It's a fairly large set. So I mean like they could like I wonder how many new light and shadow class combinations they'll actually go with. Because like if they wanted to, like what if like they just put a light and shadow of each class in the whole game in the set?
That's a lot. That's a
That'd be
lot of
pretty
new heroes
sick.
all at once. I don't think they can introduce like 13 new heroes in a set or 12 or however many classes we have. That just seems like so much.
Why?
They just wouldn't. I guess they wouldn't have the support. So like, I don't know. I guess they could.
I think I agree with you the more I think about it. It was a novel idea that I had for a second, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than 4. But yeah, I think 13 is probably too many. Maybe 6. 6 is vibing with me at the moment. How do you feel about 6? 6 hero in class or 6 like 3 light, 3 shadow and just introduce like one or two, like two new class talent combinations in it. That sounds fine,
Yeah.
especially if
I
some of
think
them are young.
six would be okay. I was initially a little bit concerned about them outpacing like the Living Legend system, where like you're adding heroes faster than they're getting removed. But I don't think that's inherently bad. I think they want the format to grow. That's why they have a format that's not intrinsically rotating. So like I think adding more than like 2 or 3 heroes is okay. And I think 6 sounds like it's not too much, and they could reasonably support it because if 4 of the classes already, I guess like if they do a light warrior and if they do another shadow brute, then it would be kind of weird because those two aren't living legends, so it might just like push them out of play if they're better than Bolton and Levia. But I think like 6 total, including the light illusionist and the shadow runeblade, and then just like maybe 2 new combinations or 4 new combinations of light, shadow, and different classes. I think that would be doable, and I think they could support that in a set as big as Dusk Till Dawn is. Maybe it would be like kind of like Arachne or even Icelander when Icelander came out in the set before she was real. I think Everfest, is that when Icelander came out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it might be like Icelander where she doesn't actually have the support and the cards that she's supposed to have, but they could put that many heroes in if they wanted to.
Yeah. But what's interesting when you say that though is like there's 3. I know it's at least Oldheim and Briar
Briar.
are like super close to Living Legend now. So that's another 2 heroes leaving the format, talented heroes as well. And certain somebody's won a bunch of tournaments with Icelander, so she's like over halfway there.
She's
And
just chilling at 600. Nobody's gonna get any more points for Icelander, so I can play her again later, right? Everybody stop playing Icelander until I want
I
to
mean,
play her
everybody's
again. That's
and like that's just and that's if you think about it, that's with what we have now with only 1 PT and only 1 Road to Nat season, or 1 Nat season and 1 Worlds. If next year they go back to 2 PTs, Nats and Worlds, I mean, that's going to be an increased clip at which heroes are going to start rotating, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I think like I'm really hoping that in the next couple of years they increase the number of callings. I think that's like something that the community has been kind of like consistently asking for is more callings in this area, more callings in this area. And it's like, well, you can't. Well, currently they're not adding more callings. So like if they want to add more callings to one area, they have to take them away from another area. But I think like the real answer is just we need more callings. We need more than 12 callings a year or however many we're getting.
You're calling on LSS to make more callings.
Yeah, and that would either result in more Living Legend points being given or them reducing how many points callings give. So yeah, that's fair. That I think it might be. I think they might just reduce how many Living Legend points a calling win gives, but I don't know.
I guess we'll see.
More callings is good.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we did it 1 year. Any hopes for the next year on the podcast? Anything you're looking forward to? Hopes, dreams, ambitions, anything like that?
The website, I'm very excited that we're
That's
very
been in
ready
development
for
for
our
3 months that
website
I
to
haven't
be
touched because I'm.
finished.
Any day you want to take that over, buddy, it's
Surely.
all yours.
Oh no!
Please.
No.
I got a full plate over here, and you have a Misty. So
Oh yeah, there was something I wanted to say too. So I realized while I was looking at the episodes, and I'm like, yeah, it's 52. We started around May of last year. It's May of this year. I'm like, hey, wait, we started like right after Austin was born. So Austin's also going to be 1 year old by the time this episode goes live. So happy birthday to Austin.
yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I like him. I'll probably hang out with him for at least another year. So we were at dinner today, and I was like, Austin, can you say reverse osmosis? I'll just ask him to say, because he can't talk yet. So I'm like, I'll say like, Austin, can you say onomatopoeia? And he just looked at me. He goes,
Oh.
it's like he was already sick of my shit.
I'm with you there, buddy.
Yeah, get used to it, buddy. He's got a long life ahead of him.
All right. What about you? What are you looking forward to over the next year?
Hopefully making more good content. hopefully more people liking our content, and the people who do like our content keep liking our content, and also don't get sick of me like my son is now, or you, I guess. Maybe people will
No,
get sick of you winning all the time. Um,
I gave him a
but
break.
yeah,
Hopefully, it's not too long of a
that's
break.
fair. Yeah, we'll have to see how national seasons go, and then we'll see if you can win Worlds TBD. That'll be a pretty good tournament, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Just like I said when we started the episode, I never thought about it much when we started the podcast because I take things pretty much as they come in my life, and that's how I'm going to keep taking the podcast going forward. As long as it's fun to do, as long as we keep enjoying it, and other people keep enjoying it, I'll probably keep doing it. So
Sounds like a
that's my
plan.
thoughts.
Awesome.
Well, on that note, then everybody. Oh wait, actually, it's the 1 year anniversary. Do you want to do the sign offs? Do you want to do the 1 year anniversary sign off? Have you ever done a sign off?
I'm uh oh gosh, have I done a
I think
sign
you've
off?
done one. Maybe you've
That
done
sounds
one.
right. That sounds right. All right,
Go ahead
everybody.
and sign us off, though, buddy. Go for it.
Always remember when you are turning 1 year old to mind